Hi, Kevin McDonald here and welcome to everybody listening in and watching. Got something really special on this week's episode. So I've been joined by Carole Neales, who's an expert in social housing. Now we're going to be going deep dive into Carole's mind on all things social housing, the benefits of social housing, what social housing is. Also, stay tuned till the end because we will be revealing a secret tip that can help you get started on your social housing journey. So let's get straight into it. Hi Carole, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me here today.
For anybody listening in, what is social housing?
It is investing in projects and properties, charities and associations to allow them to provide accommodation and support for vulnerable people in society, and we can then provide them with education and opportunities to bring them back into society. Because one of the things I don't suppose many people know is that if you go and look at social housing from an 18 to 24-year-old perspective, we're bringing those people on into life so they can come into society, but you'll probably find 10 years later that those people are in the prison service, and we have to then rehabilitate them again. Those that we're giving support to, we're not just giving a house to, but we're able to educate them to make them useful members of society again.
I've got a lot of questions out of that. First one's, what type of properties do these people stay in? Because is it just like a normal terraced house?
Yeah,
or?
So for example, we have almost 30 properties in South Yorkshire, and they are all regular terraced houses. They all accommodate 4 people, all of the same gender. Most of those are just regular people needing a home. They've become homeless because they've lost their job, their marriage has broken down, and then they've ended up on the spiral to nowhere. So they're just being helped by a housing association or a charity, and they're being given education and support so that they can go and be self-sufficient again.
So when they move into that property, say 4 people, is it typically 4 people or could it be any amount? Or?
So it can be any amount. For example, in that area, I happen to have around 30 properties that are all 4-bedroomed houses.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's 1 person per bedroom?
Absolutely.
And the support they get, is that support live-in support or is that?
No. So in those cases, because it's not high needs, it would be a support worker coming to see them 3 hours a week.
Yeah.
And helping them with budgeting, with looking after themselves, getting a job, finding a place to live, making sure that they're just capable of supporting themselves once they've left that house. So generally we keep people in the houses for 12 to 24 months, and then we try to move them on to their next property, which might be a halfway house, and then after that onto their own.
Are you involved in the day-to-day meeting these people and helping them, or is it just providing the house? What's the makeup of that?
So I'm slightly different to probably the majority of investors who want to work in this space, in as much as, because of personal things that have happened to me over my life, I have more of a lean towards this sector. And so I think if we looked at our Mastermind team, we've got lots of nurses and doctors and health workers, and those people have a big leaning towards wanting to support other people. So they have the skill set to work more closely with the commissioners at the council, to work with charities, to work with housing associations. So I choose to work with the commissioners in the council to find out what their needs are, where they have a big need. So at the moment, for example, in Bolton, we have a massive need to provide accommodation for people 18 to 24-year-olds. So I have just married up a building that was available in Bolton that was empty, that belonged to one of my other housing providers, and they weren't able to utilise it. And it's now being taken over by the other company who house 18 to 24-year-olds. We all have a specific lean. So I deal with regular homeless people, 18 to 24-year-olds, and people with mental health issues and substance and addiction abuse. So those are the kind of categories that I work in. And no, I don't have to do the stuff on a day-to-day basis. I want to understand what they're doing. I want to understand how they're providing the support. I want to know that what I'm saying to you to invest in, it will be carried through, it is sustainable, and it's got longevity.
Housing association is very different to social housing, yes?
It is, yeah. And I would think that as a regular private investor, it takes a lot of time and effort to become involved in this sector. You can't just up and do it. So I would say that if you were to look for somebody like me who could facilitate the process for you, then it would be more passive and you would be able to do good but invest at the same time.
Before we get back into the interview, I wanted to share with you about some tips on how you can get started on your property investing journey. There's a completely free guide. It's in the pinned comments and in the description. You can go download it right now as my gift to you. This will help you get started on your property investing journey so you can learn more about buy-to-let properties. Once you understand buy-to-let properties, understand buy-to-let, buy, refurbish, rent, refinance, maybe you want to take those properties and run them as social housing. What's the difference between like supported living, social housing, and typical universal credit type housing? What's the...
Okay, so the people on universal credit would come directly from the council. They'd have an AST, and you and or your management company would then be responsible for looking after that house.
So for anybody watching this, AST, assured short hold tenancy, just a standard tenant, but just one that's either not working or part-time working, and they move in as a normal tenant on an assured short hold tenancy.
Yeah.
That's a universal credit.
And they would be given a certain amount of money by the government,
Yeah.
which is obviously taxpayers' money, and they would allocate that towards their rent allowance.
But they're self-sufficient to look after themselves.
Yeah, and then they pay a top-up every month towards the bills.
Right, so they might be in a job but only working 20 hours a week
Yeah.
or something. They might be not in a job but, you know, single mum. They're not out of prison. They're not in alcoholic. They're not got any like broken home sort of situation. They're self-sufficient. They can handle their own stuff.
Yeah.
And then supported living.
So then
social
supported living, we have the different aspects. So just regular social housing, we would have a house or a block of flats or a self-made unit, and you would have people living in there that were generally homeless, and they would have a support worker who probably came to see them 2 to 3 hours a week. And then on the supported side, so that's a social, and then on the supported side, you would have more specific needs. Right. You would have people who maybe came to see you every day.
Right. Okay, so there's loads of niches, but the one you focus on is the social housing, which is sort of 3 hours a week.
Yeah, so all the properties in Yorkshire are all social housing, but then by the same token, I've just bought a property in Huddersfield, and that is specifically for one of my clients who supports people with substance and alcohol abuse.
Right. So then as an investor who's listening to this and thinking, I'd like to get into the sector, I like the idea of helping people, but will there be more maintenance? Do they damage the house? And will the neighbours like it, not like it, etc.? So I guess people kind of focus on what might go wrong.
Absolutely.
What's the big benefits of social housing from an investor point of view?
Okay, so I would say that any tenant you have in a house, things can go wrong. But if you go down the model of providing accommodation for this type of clientele, working with the right people, and you've done your due diligence, you will have companies that have been around for a long time. So my substance abuse client has been in business for 30 years and was started by somebody who was incredibly successful, lost all their money and became a drug addict. They've been in business a long time. They offer much longer tenancy agreements. They deal with all the maintenance on the inside of the property. You obviously deal with the structural. There are no voids, there are no management fees, and in the main, you don't have to visit the house at all in the entire time. And I do random checks, you know, just to...
So how often would you check a property?
If I'm honest, probably once a year.
Right. And then do they typically look after them? Are they...
I would say that the house is no worse than a regular tenant.
Right. But the benefit being that if there is any repairs, the social housing provider
Absolutely.
fixes
So
it.
if the door got broken or the kitchen got broken, they would repair it.
So when you talk about the social housing provider taking care of the maintenance, so fixing the doors, etc., typically how long do they lease a property off you for?
So I typically do it for about 5 years.
Right.
And then we do a review every 12 months.
Yeah.
And I allow that review so that we can manage everybody's expectations. They've got a repairing lease.
So that's an RFI lease, a full repairing lease.
Yeah, and so that's internal, obviously, not external. They would have that. I would check every 12 months. We have a clause in the contract every 12 months so that we can review the rents, because if the government have increased the allowance, then we would look to negotiate a slightly higher rent to bring in for the investor. If we are happy with the investor, if we're happy with the way the house is being run, we will then just write to everybody and say, this house will continue for 4 years hence.
With these like long-term RFI leases and stuff, with the type of tenant that's in there, many mortgage lenders say they want working tenants. How is there lenders out there that will lend on these type of properties?
There are more limited lenders and you've got a smaller pool to take from, but there are definitely lenders out there. So let's just pretend that the rate at the moment is 5%. If you're doing this kind of a project, you might look to be paying 7%.
So you'll pay a higher interest rate,
yeah,
but at the same time you're getting a higher rent.
You get security, no voids, no maintenance. So ultimately, you end up earning more money.
At the time of recording this, base rate's 5.25%, but
Okay.
when you listen to it in the future, it might be 5%, it might be whatever. But for instance, 5%, a mortgage on this type of property would be typically a couple of percent more.
Yeah.
Whatever the mortgage rate is, you're paying a couple of percent more whenever you watch this in the future. In a typical mortgage with voids, maintenance and management, you're probably paying way more than 2%. You're probably 3, 4, 5, 6, 7+% for all of those additional costs.
Absolutely.
So
yeah.
overall, you'll end up with more money in your pocket.
Yeah, you do end up with more money in your pocket because there's nothing to pay for.
Right.
You know, if you're getting £1,000 a month, that is what you get every single month. And that's guaranteed. You know, there's no tenant not paying.
Yeah.
Nothing. You always will get that money.
Yes, you don't have rent arrears.
Not at all. And you can plan and
Yeah.
progress and you can then buy something else because you know how much is coming in every year.
Yeah. And what's the need for this social
It's
housing?
absolutely massive, especially now. I mean, the dilemma we have in this country, as everybody knows, is we've got so many empty homes available that the government don't allow us to take. We've got buildings that could easily be converted, and if we got a conglomerate of investors together, you know, they could easily convert these properties and provide accommodation for people. But we have to deal with the hand that we've got, and that's dealing with government and planning and those kind of things.
This is the system, this is where your taxes quite often go. And if you are a taxpayer, maybe you want to get back some of the taxes you're paying, pay your tax here and get it back through renting a house out. Maybe get some of that money you're giving the government back off the government. If you like that idea, by the way, let me know in the comments, put a comment in there about getting the money back. Because whether you choose to do this or not, you could go, oh, it's taxpayers' money. It's happening anyway. You can moan about the system or you can play them at their own game and help people at the same time. But secret tip. Let's finish on the secret tip. What is the secret tip?
So by investing in this strategy, you will do so much good in the community. You will create such an amazing sense of well-being that you will open doors that you never thought were there. You'll be given the opportunity to take over buildings. You'll find investors that you didn't even know were interested in you.
Give to receive.
Totally. And you're doing so much good for the local community that you're helping the local residents, you're helping the taxpayer, you're just helping everybody, and it just creates such a feel-good feeling. You're making money and doors will open for you like you just wouldn't believe.
I think that's an amazing way to finish this. So stay connected. Make sure you've liked, subscribed, hit that notification bell. Don't miss these future episodes that are coming up all about social housing. Let's make an impact in a positive way to this country to help people. So you have been listening to a phenomenal interview right here on the podcast and YouTube channels at Progressive Property. I've been Kevin McDonald. She's been Carole Neales. You're going to see more of her and not me in the coming weeks. I'll see you all soon. Good night for now.